The Untouchable True School Sports Empire proudly presents something the boxing game's been missing. Hey, what's going on? It's your boy BT, and I came here to talk some boxing with the thousands of True School Sports subscribers. And to my left, we got a special guest. You know, I'm in the mean streets of LA, and now we're here with one of intelligent boxing's very own. If you're in the Facebook groups, you know this man right here. This is Charles Hill. So Charles, great to have you on.
Thank you for coming way out here again from Florida all the way to LA. I hope you're enjoying this weather. It's a little hot.
It reminds me back home.
Yes. Happy you got to see some baseball.
Yes.
Last night, the best player in the game, Shohei Ohtani, and looking forward to some boxing.
Yes, and today we have the Luis Ortiz versus Andy Ruiz Jr. fight. Going to be a really fun one today. Are you going to the fight, Charles?
Yes, I am going to go to the fight.
Okay, so Charles will be there. For those of you wondering, Charles will be there. But we have a lot to talk about, Charles. Just so much going on in the world of boxing. I know that you're never one to shy away from your opinions. That's what people know you for in the Facebook group. So let's just get into it, man. We have the heavyweight division, which is on fire right now. We got
absolutely
Usyk, who just beat Anthony Joshua again. Now they're talking about making the Tyson Fury undisputed fight. What's your overall take on just that whole situation?
Well, I think I've had Alexander Usyk as my number one pound for pound fighter in the world for, I think, 2 years, maybe roughly. I think he's still underrated, underappreciated. A lot of people discuss other fighters when they talk about pound for pound, when they talk about elite. So I think he's the best boxer in the world, Alexander Usyk. I think he reminds me of Evander Holyfield in terms of being an undersized heavyweight.
Yeah.
I think that his work rate is also not discussed as much, but he's in control of his work rate. So he doesn't need to be a volume fighter, but if he had to be, just like he did in his last fight, because he had to kick it up a notch, as the trainer of Anthony Joshua alerted us in round 10, I believe.
Yeah.
So Alexander Usyk is just a great boxer. Then we have the others, and I call them the others.
The others, I like that.
Including who some people are now calling an all-time great heavyweight, Tyson Fury. I still consider him an other. You know, I was impressed long ago when he beat Vladimir Klitschko. He won fairly and squarely in a fight that most people consider to be boring. But from that point, he didn't really do much.
Yeah.
And, you know, he's let the world know about his personal struggles. We saw it. We saw it in his own body. We saw how much weight he put on, and we know he had issues with drugs. But the bottom line is, he wasn't fighting the best fighters for a long period of time. And in his way back, he was made a legitimate offer by Eddie Hearn to fight Anthony Joshua, and he went the other direction. And he fought Deontay Wilder. I was there at Staples Center, now called Crypto.com. I thought he won. I believe in my opinion, I think he won 9-10 rounds. So I thought he should have become the heavyweight champion, at least WBC. And then he's fought Deontay Wilder. You know, he's had his round robin with Deontay Wilder. But I don't think that's enough to say
he's still lacking a little bit. You feel like there's more to still achieve and more depth that he needs to add to his resume.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, there's guys out there. I mean, sure, I would take him over Joyce and Dubois. I would probably take him over Parker. I don't know, because I haven't really seen Tyson Fury fight a guy like Joseph Parker. So I don't know. And I don't know if he could beat Anthony Joshua, even though Anthony Joshua has weaknesses that we've seen. I think Anthony Joshua is a very tough matchup for Tyson Fury.
You mentioned you mentioned Eddie Hearn making Tyson Fury an offer, right? And you said Tyson Fury fought Deontay Wilder and that he wasn't fighting the best fighters in the world. Are you insinuating that Tyson Fury ducked Anthony Joshua?
I'm stating he ducked Anthony Joshua.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I don't play favorites when I talk about fighters who duck, and lots of fighters who duck, high profile, low profile, mid-tier fighters. All profiles duck fights. And when they do, I'm here to discuss it.
Okay. Well, so like, as far as the offer from Eddie Hearn, like, do you feel like, because I know you think highly of Eddie Hearn. Do you feel like, because a lot of times in boxing, there's always talk about proof of funds and was the offer legitimate? Do you think Eddie Hearn made him a legitimate offer, or was it just like media talk?
In reference to Tyson Fury?
Tyson Fury, Anthony Joshua, yeah.
I mean, I don't know for sure. I don't have any evidence. And when we have all these discussions on social media, you know, guys are saying, oh, where's the evidence? Prove that this person ducked this person. The proof is that they didn't fight. That's the proof. So when two high-profile fighters have an opportunity to fight and they don't, it's because one of them or one of the sides, as in the handlers of one of them, didn't want the fight. I mean, it's as simple as that. They all know how to make a fight.
Yeah.
Tyson Fury understands the business of boxing. Frank Warren understands. Top Rank understands now, you know, the promoter of Tyson Fury. So they understand how to make fights. And Eddie Hearn and Matchroom understand how to make fights. So it's one side or the other when a fight doesn't happen. And people need to stop pretending that fighters don't duck, because they do.
What would you say is because everybody has their own, I guess, definition of what a duck is. What does Charles define as a duck?
I think a duck is very clear. Mm-hmm. If you're offered more money for a fight and you don't take it. I mean, these guys aren't fighting for charity, even though Tyson Fury on some days will convince you to believe or try to convince you that he is. They're fighting for money.
It's prize fighting.
Yes. The objective is to get paid first and foremost. Everything else comes after that, including the belts. So if Tyson Fury is offered 70 million, 50 million, whatever million to fight Anthony Joshua, and he takes 20 million to fight someone else, I don't care who that someone else is. He ducked the fight. Period. It doesn't matter. So, and we can get into all the weight classes and break it down, how fighters are ducking, you know, other opponents.
We're definitely going to do all that, because there's a lot of weight classes where you could say one guy is ducking the other guy. Like, for example, kind of segueing, the light heavyweight division, right? We just had Zotto versus Bivol get made, and before it got made, there was a lot of talk about, well, from the Zotto side, that Bivol never wanted the fight. And he went and he did his own thing, and then now he's beating Canelo, so now he's come back. What do you make of the whole Zotto Bivol fight? And I guess do you think Bivol ever avoided or ducked Zotto?
I think that Dimitri Bivol wasn't too enthused about fighting Zurdo Ramirez. I think that fight was first presented to him about 3 years ago. Zurdo has been very, very, very consistent, wanting to fight the best fighters in the world. So people talk about who he has fought or who he hasn't fought, but they don't talk about the fact that the opponents that they bring up not wanting to fight him. So Gervonta Zurdo Ramirez is willing to fight any light heavyweight in the world, and there's no question about it. So, you know, it's when people start talking resumes and they start talking all this other stuff.
Who have you fought? You know, you beat nothing but bums. You know, that whole talk, the whole rhetoric.
Maybe they need to look at who Dimitri Bivol has fought. So he's had this now one high-profile fight against Saul Alvarez, who may or may not be legitimate at 175. We saw his one-off against Sergey Kovalev, but we know 175 is not his best weight.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, people are just making Bivol to be this guy because he won this one fight. Now, should he have taken the fight? Absolutely. I'm not a hypocrite. That's the big money fight for him. That was the big money fight for him. So if that fight was on the table right now and he chose Alvarez instead of Zurdo, then that's not ducking Zurdo. But if you're trying to find lower tier guys, which Eddie Hearn was trying to find for him, maybe not lower tier, but not on Zurdo's level, then
like Buatsi, he was trying to get Buatsi to skip Zurdo in the WBA rankings to make the fight happen with him and Bivol.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I don't want anybody to like pretend that money would have been more money than the money that they're about to make when they go to, I believe, the Middle East to fight in November.
Yep.
So it's not like the money isn't there for Bivol. So all this guy hasn't fought this person, this guy hasn't fought that person, and that's your reason to not fight him. I want to see how much you're getting paid for the fight. That's what I want to see.
The figures, if the dollars make sense, that type of thing.
Yes.
Yeah, because the light heavyweight division, there's a lot of moving parts. You got mandatories being made, like Anthony Yarde's WBO mandatory, Callum Smith's WBC mandatory. You got Better Biev, who a lot of people don't really seem too anxious to fight, and for good reason. Where does he fall in this equation, Better Biev? Because Bivol obviously the talk with him fighting Zurdo, but Better Biev. Do you feel like maybe with Hearn and the whole Zurdo situation, do you think maybe they're trying to age out Better Biev because it seems like he can't get those big legacy defining fights himself? He has that problem himself.
I don't think it's Eddie Hearn or Matchroom's responsibility to make Bivol against Better Biev. One, Matchroom is not technically Bivol's promoter.
Yeah.
And two, Better Biev is looked at as the top light heavyweight in the world, despite Bivol beating the high profile guy. So no, you got to look at Top Rank the way that they're handling the situation too, because Top Rank stated that Better Biev was going in a different direction. So, and that's a situation where you can't say one or the other because both don't seem to be that enthused about making the fight. This is where I stand on it. Artur Beterbiev is the #1 light heavyweight in the world. Dmitry Bivol is the #2 light heavyweight in the world. Gilberto Zurdo Ramirez is the #3 light heavyweight in the world. That's where I stand. So if Bivol beats Zurdo as he's supposed to, then congratulations. But I can guarantee you this is going to be the toughest fight of Bivol's career. I can guarantee that. So he is fighting a legitimate light heavyweight now, not a guy who was fighting at junior middleweight, not that long ago, and then has gravitated up in weight, knocking people out.
What do you call that guy? What's that guy's name?
Saul Alvarez.
Right.
Yes. Who's utilized enhancements.
There you have it. Well, I'm with you. I'm in the same line of thought. I think Gilberto Ramirez. I'm actually picking him to beat Bivol. I'm going with the upset. But what, from your perspective, why do you feel like Zurdo will give Bivol his toughest fight?
I think Zurdo is very underrated in terms of ring generalship. Very underrated. People, I guess, are looking at him as a traditional come-forward Mexican fighter.
Slow-footed, cement-footed Mexican.
Who throws a lot of punches and is there to be hit. He has subtle defensive skills, not elite, subtle. He has a size advantage against Bivol. He knows how to use his size. And when a guy has a size advantage and is more active and the volume puncher, you're going to have your hands full. I don't know when you don't have your hands full in that situation, because generally the bigger guy does not throw as many punches. In this particular fight, I expect Zurdo to throw more punches. I do believe Bivol has greater boxing skill.
It's more mobile too.
So if I had to put my life on it and bet on the fight, I would say Bivol is going to win 115, 113. But if he loses, which there is a very good chance that Zurdo wins, I'm not going to be yelling, running around saying this is a major upset. the guy is the third best light heavyweight in the world, and he's fighting the second best.
And regardless of what people say out there about, well, because I see some comments. By the way, guys, if you're dropping comments, we're going to get to them in a second, so just be patient. But a lot of you guys are saying like, well, who has Zurdo fought? How many champions has he fought? Listen, I don't care if it's a champion or whoever. If you fight 43 people, 43 or 40 plus people, and you manage to come out victorious every time, and a lot of these guys are top contenders. You know, some guys are ex-champions. You're beating these guys soundly almost every occasion. Then that speaks to the level of your consistency and your quality as a fighter. Like kind of like in a similar way, like Terrence Crawford. They say Terrence Crawford hasn't fought nobody, but you know who exactly has made it a close fight with Terrence Crawford? He's shown you that consistency and that quality across 3 weight classes for the last more than half a decade plus. So, yes, absolutely. Pivoting into the 168 division, you know, this is a division, Charles, with a lot of, I don't know, just like a lot of stuff going on. You know,
guys going up,
guys going down. You know, so you got Benavidez, who's not really fighting, you know, 68 pounders, but calling himself a monster. You got Canelo fighting a guy who's also not a 68 pounder.
Never has been.
You got Andy Ruiz Jr., who's just kind of waiting in the wings to see. So what do you make of the super middleweight division at this moment in time?
It's chaotic.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, I don't know. I mean, it's like dysfunctional. I don't know who the best super middleweight is. Of course, there's the big name again, Saul Alvarez.
Yes.
But I don't know if he's better than David Benavidez. I don't know. I know your boy Demetrius Andrade is entering the 168-pound division at some point this year. I think that he would have a tremendous chance to beat Saul Alvarez.
So does Saul. That's why he won't fight him.
Yes. I mean, again, and that's an example of ducking a fight, by the way. So, you know, I don't know. I mean, if all these guys fight each other, I don't know if Jamal, if he moves up to 168, you know, I can see things in Jamal Charlo to suggest that he might even be better at 168 than he has been at 160. He's a strong, disciplined middleweight champion right now. He just hasn't fought in a while. So I would love to see these guys fight, but you know, to me, the 168-pound division, despite Alvarez having all the belts, I don't really know who the best is there.
Yeah, and then you got Caleb playing against Anthony Durrell coming up October 15th. So just a weird division. It's a weird division overall. Yeah. And I feel like it's been a weird division for a long time, going all the way back to the James DeGale, Badu Jack days. Remember when those? Remember that when that was billed as number 1 versus number 2, like. So it's not as bad as it used to be, but it's still just as chaotic as it was.
Yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things. My favorite fighter of all time, Roy Jones Jr., I think is unquestionably the greatest super middleweight of all time. And I thought you were going to say that, going back to Roy Jones Jr. against James Toney.
You could, because I mean, there were a couple fights that, you know, probably could have happened back then that didn't happen. Like I know people who don't like Roy, they say, I could be wrong. This could have been in a different weight class. But I remember Demetrius Mikolashevsky, remember him?
Yes.
They were saying, you know, people who don't like Roy say he ducked Demetrius Mikolashevsky.
And it's possible that he did. It's very possible. I'm not going to say he did or did not.
Yeah.
But, you know, and that should show you, the people who consider me to be biased, I'm saying it's possible that my favorite fighter of all time, Roy Jones Jr., ducked a fight or two. It's possible. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's get us some comments because people are commenting. Let me see. Shout out to we got Eddie Morales in the building. Shout out to you, Jesus. Let me see. We got my man Ron Sizzle says, "Let's be honest. Nobody beats Shakur. He's the best in the world in boxing. He gets better every fight, and he is also technical in the ring. It's crazy, you know." And that's one of the things you wanted to talk about.
Yes.
Was Shakur Stevenson. What do you make of Shakur?
I think Shakur Stevenson is amazing, incredible. I've watched him spar I've watched him train. I've been to several of his professional fights. In my opinion, he's the only boxer in the world that there's no reason to discuss the rest of the weight class that he's in. Currently 130. You know, no disrespect to the other champions, no disrespect to the contenders, the up-and-comers, the gatekeepers, the established veterans, whomever is at 130. Shakur Stevenson is way better than whoever you want to discuss there at junior lightweight, super featherweight. So yes, he is in a category all by himself. I have Usyk, number one pound for pound. But in terms of dominance, in terms of being so much better than peers, Shakur Stevenson is on an island by himself. That includes your boy from Japan.
Inoue?
So, yes, that includes Inoue. Shakur Stevenson, defense, offense when he wants to turn offensive, the way he moves in the ring, the way he controls his opponents, the way he controls the pace.
Understanding of distance.
Yes.
Top shelf.
You know, and I was privy to being able to see some things before he even became a professional, before his first professional fight, and even between his first fight and maybe his fifth or sixth. In terms of watching him spar, the guy is willing to spar anybody. And as he said, you know, he sparred Terrence Crawford when he was 17. Yes, Terrence Crawford gave him a lesson. But I think people should take from that, this guy is willing to spar anybody. And he was sparring world champions, and making them look like amateurs. He did it in front of my own eyes. I was blown away. And that's why I'm on record saying, before 2023 is over, Shakur Stevenson will be the number one pound for pound boxer in the world.
Okay. I know when I interviewed Shakur the day of the first Oscar Valdez press conference or whatever, I asked Shakur, I said, you know, American boxing has been looking for, you know, a guy pretty much since Floyd retired. You know, how do you feel like maybe you're that guy that can step into those shoes? And he said it with conviction. He said, yeah, I'm, you know, the Crawfords, the Thomas Hearns, the Sugar Ray Leonards, all them guys, just put me up there with those guys, because that's where I'm going to be. And he wasn't saying it like in a cocky way, because sometimes guys say things to talk themselves up and try to convince themselves. You could tell he really meant what he said.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He's great, and he knows he's great. Simple as that.
My man Grind Hard Sports Nation says Bivol wanted that Canelo bag first before fighting Zerno. Yes, sir.
Absolutely, and that's what I say. People, if you're going for the money, then you're not ducking, because this is your profession, you know. So if somebody's offering you $10 million to fight, and you also have a $2 million fight on the table, nobody ducks $2 million for 10. You should take the $10 million.
Okay. Eddie says, but Zerto's been ducking people too.
Eddie, who has Zerto ducked?
Yeah, who has he ducked? Eddie, in the comments, let us know who did Zerto duck?
Yeah, I would love to know that.
Yeah. RR1000 says the young Russian boxer fights every style before making the pros. Bivol knows the Mexican style. So.
Yeah, well, who are the examples that we've seen him prove that to? So it definitely wasn't Alvarez, because Alvarez has his own style as a counterpuncher. Now has become more of a stalker as he moved up in weight, but still a defensive-minded counterpuncher. So, I mean, I'm not dismissing how good Bivol is. He's a great boxer.
He's world-class. He's a world-class fighter.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, fundamentally, as sound as pretty much anyone out there. But, you know, just because he has those fundamentals, like other boxers, maybe Usyk, Lomachenko, even though Lomachenko likes to get flashy, Crawford, even though Crawford likes to take chances, you can have these elite fundamental skills and still not have that extra
Yeah, just because a guy is more technically sound and fundamental doesn't mean he'll beat the lesser fundamentally sound guy in every occasion. You know, there's been plenty of guys who like look at when Ricardo Mayorga fought Vernon Forrest. You know, Vernon Forrest way more schooled than a Mayorga,
Absolutely.
but Mayorga just had that different thing in his style that was able to get him over the hump. You know, sometimes unpredictability is the best attribute of a
Yes.
fighter.
And I will say this: if Bivol, you know, stays within himself and just boxes to win the fight, he's probably going to win. It's going to be Zurdo's job, Zurdo's obligation to get Bivol out of that comfort zone.
Yeah.
So yeah, when you can systematically just box your way to a victory, as we saw happen in Australia, for example, that I think we're going to be discussing in a few minutes. You know, if you can do that, more power to you. I just personally don't think that's what's going to happen in this fight.
Yeah, I see Bivol having to actually get out of his first or second gear and dig into that toolbox, because I don't really feel like Bivol has beat anybody with his A game yet.
Mm-hmm.
He's been beating everybody with his B and his C game. So I think Zurdo is quality enough to make Bivol have to actually exchange, to fight, to really, really show everything he has, not just the pure boxing skills.
Yes. And one thing I want to add, because this is going to be like a recurring theme, on the people that are saying or asking who has Zurdo fought, understand what you're doing after Bivol fights him. When you're questioning the opponent that he's about to fight, then you're kind of discrediting the accomplishment that Bivol may or may not be able to complete. So I think you should kind of, watch how you do that, because we see this in pretty much every weight class, people talking about who has this guy fought. But then when he gets in the ring with their favorite, all of a sudden it's the greatest win, in the history of the world. So
I got a great example of that. I remember when Canelo was getting ready to fight Caleb Plant. I said, Caleb Plant's a good fighter. This be a good fight. And people said, no, it won't. Caleb Plant's a bum. He hasn't fought nobody. Caleb Plant, basically he ain't shit. That's pretty much what they were saying. And then when Canelo beat him, they said, man, Caleb Plant's a good boxer. If he just had more power, this guy would be so we gotta stop doing that in boxing, like what Charles said. We have to start respecting the fighters before they win or they lose against our favorite fighter. That's why you don't hear me like Chocolatito's my favorite fighter. I don't go around talking trash about Rung Vasai or Cuadras or Cal Yafai or Julio Cesar Martinez. I give all these guys respect because they're all at that level for a reason.
absolutely.
Yeah, so that's what it is. Eddie Morales wants to know from you, Charles, what are your thoughts on promoters charging $75 for non-pay-per-view worthy fights? That seems to be a recurring theme in boxing these days.
Are you alluding to, I don't know how much they're charging for the fight tonight.
I think it's about $75.
So Andy Ruiz against Luis Ortiz.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think it's unfortunate, in terms of the overall consumer, the overall or fan base of boxing. I'm disappointed. I mean, I live in Los Angeles, California, so I'm attending the fight. So it's kind of hard. I'm kind of put in a difficult situation on that, Eddie, because I'm choosing to attend the fight. So I'm interested in going to this card. I'm interested in enjoying boxing, but I mean, that's what I do pretty much every week or every other week, whether it's a small card that nobody's heard of or a mega card. But I guess to answer your question, it shouldn't be pay-per-view. It shouldn't be $75. I disagree. That's what it is. I think that, the fight should be on Fox television a week before the NFL starts, and I think it would have garnered tremendous ratings to be on Fox. And I'm not talking about Fox Sports. I'm talking about Fox, as in
regular Fox.
Out here is Channel 11 in Los Angeles. I don't know what the channel is where Eddie's at, but that's what I think it should have been on. So I'm disappointed with all these pay-per-views. I think it's unnecessary.
Yeah, and it's really like one of the content creators here on YouTube. Shout out to Cali X Boxing. He said that boxing is kind of becoming like a country club sport in a way because you're making it less accessible to the public. You're diluting the product so much so to the point to where it's even becoming difficult for the hardcores, your core base, to even access the fights at times.
Yeah. And that's what's led to illegal streaming, which is unfortunate because, I mean, we all should be better than that. Because I'm against illegal streaming as well. Have I ever clicked on a stream that somebody sent me? Yes, I have, and I've enjoyed a fight or two. So, I'm a transparent person. That's one thing. So you guys can ask me anything. I'm going to give you the real answer because I don't answer to any of these promoters, these managers, these outfits. I go to fights because I want to go to fights, period.
You know them too.
And I will say whatever needs to be said to the promoters, managers, and fighters. So I'm not going to be a hypocrite. I know a lot of people in boxing and I've had friends send me links to some fights, but I don't indulge in that anymore. I won't indulge in that. And I'm asking you all not to watch the illegal streams, not to promote them. It's unfortunate. I understand money is tight for lots of people, but if there's a way that you can watch the fight civilly, and not on a blurred screen, and respect the sport of boxing, because that's the only way that it's going to get better for all of us.
It's for the fans to actually start paying for the fights.
Yeah.
So I think there needs to be high medium. Fans got to get more responsible, but I also think the promoters got to get more responsible too, because Charles Martin versus Luis Ortiz, Luis Ortiz is not pay-per-view. I mean, it's their product. They can do what they want. It's just I don't think you should ask people to pay for.
I think we can get into that. Yeah, when we discuss the issues
towards
with
the end,
promoters,
we'll get into that.
Yeah,
we'll get into that. Last question, then we'll get back to the weight classes. Let me see. I got a question right here. Where is it? Michael says, if Zotto wants belts, then when you have the WBO at 168, as soon as you go up, that was his easiest title to get at the time. Joe Smith at the time, or was it Elite or Alvarez? So I guess he's saying that. Are you saying that he should have won the WBO route, Michael? That's what it sounds like. What do you think? You think Zotto should have won up the WBO route at 175?
If it was an opportunity, yes. And I mean, technically what he's saying is accurate, but you can be accurate and still not viable. Meaning, a lot of people, said as far as Crawford, if he couldn't fight for the title, another belt at 147, he could move up and fight for a belt at 154, the WBO. I mean, but can he really? If Jermell Charlo is the champion at the WBO, so I mean, you still have to get the WBO to agree, to your petition. I guess that's what it would be when a champion is moving up to the next weight class and trying to get an immediate title shot, like Crawford did when he moved up from 140 to 147. He got an immediate title shot against Horn. So as far as Zerto, I don't know. I mean, a lot of these guys, they have the will, they have the interest, they have the ambition, but they don't have the know-how to maneuver and get the fights that they want to get. And they try to,
have a team that has the know-how.
Exactly. And they try to, align themselves with people who do, and they trust those people are going to get them the fights that they want to get. I've met Zerto. I appreciate the fact that he's worked hard to learn, understand, and speak, the English language, the only language that I speak fluently. So we've had some good conversations. And this guy's always just wanted to fight the best. And he's stayed in the shadow of Saul Alvarez, who he's wanted to fight for years and years and years and years and years. They're both from Mexico.
They both fought each other before. They know each other.
And regardless of who you say Zerto has fought or who he hasn't fought, he hasn't lost. So again, I'm not a hypocrite because you can make these statements, but he's been a champion. I hear people saying that Jaron Boots Ennis is the greatest thing since sliced bread. And then when you ask them, well, who is he fought? Oh, well, we're looking at his skills.
The eye test,
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm just asking people, don't be hypocrites. If you're trying to make a point, then you're going to have to stand on that point. And that's why, you should think twice when you're making these type of points, who did this person fight? Because most boxers do not get the fights that they're trying to get.
Yeah, for whatever the case may be. But speaking of fighters who don't get the fights they're supposed to get, I know, perfect segue, middleweight division, right? Lots going on and not going on at the same time in the middleweight division.
Yes.
My guy, Demetrius Andre, as you stated earlier, he's going up to 68 to fight Zach Parker. There's a mandatory that, people in the boxing community who are interested in seeing him fight Johnny Beck. He elected to not fight him. What do you make of the middleweight division with Andre? You got Johnny Beck, who's a new champion. You got Charlo, Golovkin, who's in limbo. What do you make of it right now?
Well, I mean, Andrade has officially left the division.
Yeah.
So, see you later, Demetrius. Yeah. Welcome to 168. So I don't have anything to say about him as far as middleweights because he's not in the division anymore. Triple G, I think he's still holding 2 belts at 160.
Unified champ.
He's fighting at 168 in 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So he's not in the division anymore. That leaves us with one champion, really, Jermall Charlo, who hasn't fought this year.
Since last June. He hasn't fought since last June.
So we're talking about a long layoff because of some issues that he's had to deal with.
He even sit out the whole year, it seems like, because the year's almost over.
Yeah. So, I mean, by default, I'm going to say Jermall Charlo is the best middleweight in the world right now. And I saw what Janibek said, that he's coming to get all the belts. I've watched him. I've been to a couple of his fights. He's good. He's legitimate. He's not some type of
hype job.
Yeah, he's not a hype job. He's very good. I think he would have lots of trouble against Jermall Charlo.
You think so?
Lots of trouble. Yes.
Lots of trouble. Maybe
lots of trouble. Lots of trouble. Yes.
I don't think so.
Jermall Charlo, people talk about him. I still remember when I was at the fight at USC against J-Rock when he threw that beautiful counter. My God, the timing, the explosiveness. That's one of the greatest punches I've literally ever seen, and I've watched boxing for a long time. Jermall Charlo, I mean, he's good. He's underappreciated in terms of as a boxer. I really do think. I think he is underappreciated. I mean, I was pushing and hoping he was going to fight Demetrius Andrade when he got that big offer of $7 million. For whatever reason, the fight didn't happen, which is why I labeled it a duck. But just because somebody ducks doesn't mean they would lose the fight. There are guys that have ducked fights that they would have won. So, but back to the point, Jermall Charlo, I mean, by default, I think he's the best middleweight in the world. Maybe he's going to move up and fight Benavidez or somebody else. So right now, that's the guy I'm saying is the best. Even though
Johnny Beck,
he might not even fight in 2022. Yeah. Let's find out. Let's give it a couple more weeks. Let's see if Jermall can get on the calendar.
All right. We'll wait and see with Jermall Charlo. You also have, you have the junior middleweight division, the 154 division, which, Charlo, the other Charlo, they call him Little Charlo, but I kind of look at him as Big Charlo right now because he's doing some big things. He's the undisputed champion. You can speak to this. Like, he just won the title, was it April or May? And they booked him all the way for January? Like you're
I should know. I was at the fight.
You're trying to build momentum for Jermall Charlo, who is the undisputed champion. He wins all the belts in April or May, and you book him 7 or 8 months in advance. Like, what do you make of that? Because I think it's kind of weird. I can't think of a time where I've seen that before.
Well, hate to bring up this word again, but it's kind of a sideways duck because there is a man who did say he wants to fight Jermall Charlo, and that man brings more to the table than Zoo does. So brings more money,
more prestige,
accolades, exposure, but back to more money. So it's a bigger money fight. I don't know. Maybe PBC wanted to put Jermell to the side so they didn't have to entertain the thought of the WBO champion from the weight below moving up and taking one of those belts.
Terrence Crawford. Yeah.
Maybe. Because I don't really see the logic, as you said, 5, 6, 7, 8, whatever months in advance. That means you're not even entertaining any options. So you've achieved this great feat to become undisputed champion at 154, and then you basically don't even entertain options.
You're voluntarily losing momentum.
Yeah.
Like momentum is a real thing in boxing, especially in this day and age where there's so many weight classes and fighters and promotional entities and social media. You need to be as active as possible, especially when you're a guy like Jermell Charlo, who's exciting, who brings so much with him, like his personality, all that kind of stuff. 7 months is just it's foolishness.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like, okay, it's like putting yourself on the shelf. So,
and it leaves too much room for interpretation, because you might say Crawford, right? Which I think that's part of it. But then, maybe some people might say he's ducking Sebastian Fundora, because Fundura's got a date in October, and a lot of people want to see Charlo versus Fundura, and they feel like maybe this is pushing that possibility back.
Yeah. See, let me show you the consistency. So I don't want to hear anything about either one of us being biased. I'm not going to say ducking Sebastian, because what is Sebastian really bringing to the table? Is Sebastian bringing all this to the table, that this is going to be a big money fight for Jermell? I mean, I don't know. I can't say that. I know that he's scheduled to fight next month. I will be there at my favorite venue in Carson, California.
War Grounds, the StubHub Center. What do they call it?
StubHub, Home Depot, now Dignity Sports Park, Health, whatever. My favorite venue for boxing. Sebastian's fighting on October 8th. I'll be there. But I mean, what is he bringing? And by the way, if you guys want to go to that fight, tickets are available, great seats, which is the point. So there are great seats available for a very affordable price, because Sebastian's not on that level. Sebastian's not bringing a lot of money to Jermell. So no, that's not a fight that Jermell could be blamed for ducking. But if the guy at a weight class below you is bringing money to the table, accolades, pound for pound, legitimate pound for pound status, and you say no to that, you are ducking.
That's a bad look if you're ducking a guy like Terrence Crawford, who turned pro at 135. That'd be a horrible look, And we're gonna get into that stuff in a little bit, but man, it just seems like when the man from Omaha is brought up, people's tone of voice starts to change a little bit. It's not quite the same. So
it is what it is.
It is what it is. We also have, I mentioned middleweight, 140, the junior welterweight division, the division that's just like Josh Taylor, right? He's vacating these belts, and he's making more great fights happen by vacating than some of the promoters are. It's crazy. What do you make of, I guess, the merry-go-round that is the 140-pound division?
I think that Josh Taylor, excellent boxer. I hear people say that on Regis fans, and I like Regis Prograis a lot.
Fantastic fighter.
I hear a few people say they thought Regis won that fight. Josh Taylor is excellent, great 140-pound boxer, or at least he was. Then he had his mandatory. Jack Catterall. And he got beat. Josh Taylor got beat. So, check the records. Yeah, you can say check the records to me. And Josh Taylor won. Josh Taylor got beat. when that happens, when you have this controversial ending to a fight and controversial decision, and you're not jumping up and down to prove that it wasn't controversial, then I don't know, how much you want this anymore. I'm not really sure. This is the same year that Josh Taylor, I believe, I wasn't there, I didn't see pictures, I believe he got married. I believe he went on his honeymoon this year. So we've seen other fighters, have their romantic experiences, we shall say, and then we've questioned how much that they have the fire to box anymore. So I don't know where his head is at, to be honest with you. I mean, I think it's a little bizarre, this whole way he's vacating belts. I think it's bizarre that people are making this rematch against Jack Catterall to be this big thing when there's better junior welterweights than Jack Catterall. So, to me, this whole year for Josh Taylor, I mean, bless him. You got married, congratulations, and I hope your honeymoon was wonderful, because what you've done in the ring hasn't impressed me, and I don't think it's impressed a lot of people. And the way you reacted to the poor decision, people weren't impressed with either. Prior to that, Josh Taylor, we can go back to the somewhat boogeyman. In 2021, Josh Taylor was saying he wanted to move up and fight Terrence Crawford.
That was the thing at one point.
Yes, and Terrence Crawford actually confronted him in person and discussed it and told him he'd beat the shit out of him. Now, this is on film, so I'm not trying to rile anybody up, but it's like, okay, guys say something and then now they're back to, they're humbled. And that's how I see Josh Taylor. You're being humbled whether you like it or not. If you want to prove that you are the best at 140, then you're going to need to fight somebody else than Jack Catterall. All you're going to prove is that you're better than Jack Catterall, and congratulations, 2 chances to beat him. Whatever.
Okay. Well, they have 140. I mean, you also have like all the title fights, like Regis is fighting Zepeda for the WBC. They had the crazy Marv Nation $2.4 million purse bid.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I hope it goes through. I'm not familiar with this outfit.
Club show.
Yeah.
Promotional company.
Yeah. So, I mean, they bid way more than the other promoters. Regis is a good man, a real boxer, willing to fight anybody at 140. Always brings it. So I'm hoping that the money comes through and that we get an excellent fight, and may the best man win.
No, absolutely. So yeah, hopefully 140 straightens itself out, because it was division that seemed like it had a guy, and right when we got the guy, he found out maybe he can't handle that pressure. He said it himself.
Yes.
He said that the pressure of, I guess, being the undisputed guy got to him, because I remember like when the World Boxing Super Series, Josh Taylor, a lot of people didn't think he was going to win the World Boxing Super Series. So it's different when you become when you're the hunter than when you become a hunter.
Absolutely.
A lot of guys can't handle that pressure.
Yeah, and I did forget to mention the guy that I do think is the best, who just entered the division, Teofimo Lopez. So I would take Teofimo Lopez. I know I'm in the minority on that. I know people believe if Devin Haney moves to 140 that he's going to be the guy. I know people would take probably Regis against Teofimo. But I think Teofimo Lopez is the best 140-pounder, and I think if he gets the opportunities to fight for the belts, I think he's going to win them.
That's a bold statement right now, because I mean, I didn't make much of the Campbell fight because I felt like Campbell was just a tailor-made opponent for him to go in there and win against. So I didn't take much good or bad from it. It just was to me. But it's a bold statement right now. Not a lot of people are saying that about Teo. But I'm going to go back to some previous comments I've made years ago, like when he was at 135. I feel like he's going to do his best boxing at 140, Teo. I think we're going to see some of the best Teofimo Lopez fights at 140 when he matures and all that good stuff.
And he won't duck anybody.
No, absolutely not. Want to get some comments? We see we got my man Click Clack. He says, "What do you think about boxing journalists like Ellie Seckback that sniff on Al Heyman's behind?"
Is that for you or me?
I don't know if is that for me or Charles? I mean, listen, man. However, any other content creator wants to run their channel, that's on them. I can't talk on them. I can just talk about me.
Okay.
I know. I'm gonna be here. I'm gonna cover boxing, and I'm gonna do my best to be a good ambassador for the sport. That's all I can worry about. I can't worry about Ellie.
Well, I'm in a different category, so I can talk about Ellie. I can talk about anybody in boxing, even the people who say they want to fight me after I make some comments.
Does it happen often to you? Do people say
it happens very often? You know, somebody, you know, a YouTuber, a writer, a poster on Facebook will make a dumb post, and you know, it's not like I'm the social media police, but if I'm involved in a conversation and somebody says something dumb, I'll say, "You made a dumb comment." Yeah. Oh, you're gonna say it to my face? Sure, I'll say it to your face, but I'm not gonna seek you out. I'm just gonna repeat what I said, you know, as if you couldn't read it. And if I say something dumb, even in this interview, if I say something dumb, then I have no problem if somebody says, "Oh, that was a dumb statement that you made, Charles." I'm not gonna wanna fight you. I'm gonna look at what I said, I'm gonna think about it, I'm gonna hear the other side, and I'll either say, "No, I don't think what I said was dumb. Maybe I need to explain it better." And that's it, but I'm not gonna take personal offense to it. To the question about Ellie is a dedicated media person. And when I say dedicated, what I mean is Ellie goes to the source. Ellie is consistent. Ellie is not trying to pick sides. He's not trying to instigate, you know, or anything like that. And Eddie is not biased for Al Haymon. So, you know, I see Ellie a lot at PBC cards, and I see him
everywhere,
you know,
even the charity events.
Yes,
you know, he goes to all kinds of things, and you know, just in general, you know.
Yeah, I've known of Ellie, you know, on a high and by basis for a very long time. He was covering basketball out here in LA. He was covering the Lakers, you know, consistently and aggressively, and bringing, you know, information and news to the fans of basketball. And now he's focused on boxing, and he's been focused on boxing for a long time. So, you know, I think Ellie is good for boxing. I think there's a lot of YouTubers who are not good for boxing. Ellie is very good for boxing. You know, when he goes to the gyms, when he interviews the trainers and he interviews the fighters, I mean, he's giving them exposure. He's not trying to give himself exposure like some of these other guys are doing. You know, he's giving the sport exposure, and remember that. That's what all boxing journalists, media reporters, you know, you need to humble yourself and give the spotlight to the sports.
And the up-and-comers, not just the big names.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, you know, if you're a media person and you have your own personal favorite fighters, that's fine. But number one, you should acknowledge that they're your favorites instead of pretending, and continue to do your work. You know, there's media people in all sports, and they have their favorites. We've seen it, you know, I know one of your favorite sports is baseball.
Yes.
And the media hated one of the greatest, if not the greatest player of the modern era, Barry Bonds. The media hated him. And because the media hated him, he's not a Hall of Famer.
And that's disgraceful.
No, he used steroids, blah, 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 blah. There's baseball players who've tested positive who are in the Hall of Fame. So don't give me this about Barry Bonds. That's why he's not in the Hall of Fame. He's not in the Hall of Fame because the media hates him. And they've hated him since he was a young player on the Pittsburgh Pirates. So the media has a lot of influence. And now the way the media is behaving in boxing, the media is playing into these rivalries by the promoters. Yeah. They're making it something that sometimes it's not. And they're excusing fighters for not fighting fighters of other promotional companies and something like that. I don't accept that. I never will. I never will give that excuse or allow that excuse. So if you're with one outfit and you're not fighting somebody at another outfit, then one of you is ducking.
Yeah, I would even say like some of the media these days are actually making it harder for fights to get done.
Absolutely.
Because like I said, they're playing into the agendas. Some media channels, which I will not name, but you know what I'm talking about, they'll make videos saying that they have breaking news, but then say it's not breaking news in the beginning of the video. Yeah. And they're just doing this as like a hustle to get views and attention and whatever, money, whatever the case may be. So I think boxing media people, and I mean, raise both my hands because I think I could always improve. You know, we got to do a better job. You know.
Yeah, I talk about, and this is something I just talk about in general in life. I talk about exploitation a lot. You know, I do a lot of community work. I talk about people who are minorities and the struggles that we all have, and I don't like to see anything get exploited.
Yeah.
Fight fans want to be entertained. You know, when I'm at the fights, when I'm at Staples Center, now called Crypto.com this evening, you know, I'm going to be among people who enjoy watching my favorite sport. So, you know, we are there to have a good time. We're there to be entertained. We're not there to argue pound for pound. We're not there
purse splits,
to
ratings.
say who fought who didn't fight who. We're there to be entertained. And, you know, the media that is kind of taking us away from that, I don't really appreciate this new age YouTube media who they're trying to be the entertainment and not allow the sport to be the entertainment. So, you know, all this breaking news or all these excuses, these reasons for this fight not happening, that fight not happening, be consistent. We all want to see Tank Davis against Ryan Garcia. We all want to see Errol Spence Jr. against Terrence Crawford. We all wanted to see Anthony Joshua versus Deontay Wilder. We wanted to see Tank and Loma get it on. We wanted to see Loma and Mikey get it on. We want to see these fights. I can say it because I'm there every week, whether I'm at a small room that you've never heard of, you know, out in a suburb of Los Angeles, watching some fights, you know, of guys that might never be a top 10 contender, or
TV, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Or if I'm at a major show, you know, we want to be entertained, and we will get that maximum entertainment if the YouTube media gets on board and talks about these fights that need to get made, as opposed to excusing or saying, well, this person doesn't have the resume, so that's why he's not going to get this fight. Are you looking at a resume when you're sitting there at home? When you guys are watching boxing, are you looking at a resume?
On fight night.
So I don't care. These guys aren't applying for a job. They're getting in a ring in a violent sport, making a living, taking care of their families, and most of whom are trying to entertain us in the process. Some aren't, but most of whom they're trying to entertain us. So respect these boxers. These are professional boxers. You know, a lot of people say putting their life on the line, and it's true. You know, unfortunately, when you go to so many fights, you actually get exposed to that too. And I mean, so I've actually been at more than one card where a professional boxer has lost his life. And, you know, this is serious. So,
life and death.
You know, hiding behind a computer, you know, arguing about this and making fun of who guys have fought when they're trying their hardest to get the biggest fights and nobody's giving them the opportunity, you know, I don't respect that. I'm going to call it out. And yes, I'm going to call you dumb and stupid when you do that.
As you should, because every fighter at every level of boxing, when they first put the pair of gloves on, they all start off with that dream of wanting to become champion. And now, obviously, not everybody becomes champion. Not everybody reaches that pay-per-view level. But to to your point where you say, well, who is this guy fight? You're disrespecting the sport. You're disrespecting all those days those guys put in the gym, all the sparring sessions, all the cuts, all the things that make boxing the best sport in the world. You are disrespecting that. That's why, like, when Canelo told Demetrius Andrade, you haven't fought anybody, I had a big problem with that.
Yeah.
Because you're not only disrespecting Andrade, you're disrespecting the guys who he's fought, who all put work into the sport, some of which fought guys on your own resume. So you're disrespecting yourself without even knowing it.
Right.
So it's like you gotta be very responsible in the statements you make, you know?
Yeah. And just be consistent, because if that's what you're gonna say, then you're opening it up for us to talk about, you know, I don't know who, the Rocky Feldings of the world, whomever. Like, and I can make fun of the name because he's never going to be as good as Demetrius Andrade, period. Never. So, you know, if you're going to talk about who is this one guy has fought, then now let's go through the list of all of your opponents and see who they fought to get an opportunity to fight you.
Yeah, because like I've done it before on my channel. I went through Canelo's resume and I've just picked it apart. Like I think it was like his 7th pro fight. He fought the journeyman Francisco Villanueva, and then he fought him again like 5 fights later, and then he fought him again and had a draw. He actually had a draw with him. He was like 5-17-2. But I don't hear nobody say, well, Canelo's a bum because he had a draw with the 5-17 journeyman when he was 18 years old.
Yeah.
Nobody says that, but it's there. It's there to be there to be criticized if you want to go down that route.
I'll never, ever, and people can look at all my posts, all my comments, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. I'll never refer to a professional boxer as a bum.
No, you should
never.
I don't either.
Never have, and I never will.
I don't either, but that's what people would say. I don't
Right.
call them bums either, because I've been punched in the mouth in the ring, so I don't like calling guys bums. I know what it's like in there. But let me see. We'll just go to the lightweight division, right? Because I know you wanted to talk about the lightweight division. So, you know, very intriguing time in the lightweight division. You got Devin Haney, who's got all the marbles, all the belts. He's fighting George Kambosos in the rematch soon. You know, you got a lot of things. You know, Shakur might move up there soon. A lot of things going on. What's your take on the lightweight division right now?
I think it's, you know, it's intriguing. I'll say that. It's very intriguing. I'm very happy for Devin Haney. He's done it his way. He's remained as independent as he possibly could to come up the ladder to reach mandatory status. People have argued in reference to how he achieved his original WBC belt and whether Vasily Lomachenko wanted to fight him or not. Feel free to ask questions about that. I have my own perspective of that. But so we can stay on point. Devin Haney is now the champion. He's the official champion. He's the undisputed champion. He's the only champion. No one else at 135 should call themselves champion. It should just be Devin Haney. Now, as far as George Kambosos, you know, it was a great performance against Teofimo Lopez. I mean, once multiple medical doctors come out and, you know, disclose information about someone's condition, then I'm going to take a step back. I'm not going to, you know, criticize Teofimo Lopez because based on what's been disclosed, he shouldn't have been in the ring in the first place. So the fact that the fight was competitive based on his health condition or conditions, you know, more power to Teofimo, to be honest with you. So George Kambosos was there. He took advantage of an opportunity. He won those belts.
Made some great money now in the process too.
Yes.
You know,
and you know he immediately. But here's the respect that you have to give George Kambosos. What was the first thing that he did when he won the belts? He said, "I'll give Teofimo a rematch." Mm-hmm. That's the first thing he did. Okay. He offered a rematch to Teofimo Lopez. A lot of guys, as you know, don't offer rematches when they are tested to that degree. Teofimo said, "No, I'm moving up in weight." Then he said, "I want to fight the best." So he didn't want to take, you know, a victory lap.
No tune-ups.
Which he could have done. he said, and he named the fighters: Tank Davis,
Mm-hmm.
Vasily Lomachenko.
Lomo, yeah.
Ryan Garcia's name was thrown out there. Devin Haney. Now, Devin Haney and his father, Bill Haney, were the most aggressive in terms of trying to get Kambosos in the ring. Lomachenko ended up agreeing to a fight, and then the war breaks loose between Russia and Ukraine.
Yep.
So Devin Haney was there, ready to take the fight. So I think things went Devin Haney's way. It's interesting how people say Devin Haney made sacrifices, compromises, gave things up. He didn't give up anything, nothing. So he traveled, if you consider traveling to fight, making sacrifice. But again, that means you're not acknowledging that a bunch of fighters traveled to America from overseas to fight out here.
Yeah.
So are you going to give the credit to the guys fighting tonight at Staples Center, now Crypto.com, who don't reside in America?
Like Isaac Cruz.
I mean, are you going to say? Are you going to say that they're making all these sacrifices and not getting 4 belts and not getting, multi-million dollars? So first of all, Devin Haney didn't make any sacrifice to fight George Kambosos. It was actually a gift that fell into his lap. So Kambosos is not as good as Lomachenko. He's not as good as Shakur Stevenson, who's not at 135 yet. He's not as good as Ryan Garcia. He's not as good as Tank Davis. So Devin Haney had the easy way to get to become undisputed. Now he has another opportunity to fight him. Good pay. He just has to travel again, and he should come out victorious. So he's at the right place at the right time. None of this makes Devin Haney actually better than Lomachenko. Doesn't make him better than Teofimo, who's moved up. Doesn't make him better than Ryan. Doesn't make him better than Tank. So it just makes him the guy who's champion because he had the opportunity to fight for the belts and he won. That's how I see it. Devin Haney is cool. I like Devin Haney. I appreciate the fact, again, that he's independent. He signed a 3-fight deal with Top Rank. I don't know what's going to happen after the 3 fights. I don't know who the 3rd fight's going to be. I know Lomachenko wants it to be him. I know Top Rank wants it to be Lomachenko. But again, yeah, I would love for it to be Shakur. I would love for it to be Tank. I would love for it to be Ryan. I would love for it to be Teofimo, Josh Taylor, Regis. Any of those guys would be better than George Kambosos. Any of them. So I'm emphasizing that point because to all of you who are saying that Devin Haney is now pound for pound top 10, he's not. I just named off the top of my head 6 or 7 or 8 guys better than George Kambosos. So Devin Haney is not pound for pound. He's the undisputed champion. Congratulations. He's legitimate. Look forward to watching him fight again.
Okay. I know you mentioned Tank, right? Now I know for good, better, and different, the other promotions, they're gonna come with the whole Tank doesn't have the belts, but he's the guy calling the shots. He's the draw. So yes, because he's the draw, by way of being the draw, he's the best fighter in the division. Now we know at boxing fans that this isn't true. It's BS. It's the rhetoric that promoters use. But what do you see him in all this, Gervonta Davis?
Well, Tank is box office. Tank is one of the few fighters that I will personally travel to go watch fight.
Watch in person.
Tank reminds me of Mike Tyson. He really does remind me of Mike Tyson, despite the adversity that he's faced in the last few fights. I'll put it like that. Yeah. I know what he's capable of doing. I know how explosive he is. I know he hits very hard. As an added bonus to a person like me, who's a single man, Tank Davis attracts a lot of women to his fights. Thank you. And I appreciate that, Tank. I very much enjoy attending your fights. So whether it's in Atlanta, whether it's in Baltimore, whether it's in New York, whether it's in Las Vegas, whether it's in California, I will be at Tank's fight. Now, that's the box office, that's the explosiveness, that's the talent, all that. And he has skill too, by the way, very underrated skills. I have Tank, by the way, in the top 10 pound for pound because of those boxing skills that he has that are underappreciated. Now, with that being said, does he duck fights? Did you ask me that question?
Well, no, I didn't, but does he duck fights?
Yes. Yes, he ducks fights. So, perfect example, Tank Davis, we don't know exactly what he makes. We hear that, he gets back in money. We hear all these other things. But if he's fighting Cruz for a couple of $1 million, if he's fighting Rolly for a few $1 million, whatever he's getting on those fights, he can get more fighting Ryan Garcia. That's the bottom line. So, we can discuss what would potentially happen in that fight, in that matchup, but we can't debate which matchup brings more money to Tank. So, again, I'm not a hypocrite. If Tank is choosing to fight somebody for less pay, he's ducking the one who brings more pay. It's simple as that. Nothing against Tank. I like Tank as a person.
Yeah.
I've had several conversations with him. He probably doesn't remember me because he's got a lot going on in his life. I've watched him spar. I've enjoyed watching him spar. He puts on a show, that I feel like, damn, how much were the tickets for this?
Was that good?
Yes, he's entertaining. And I wish that he would have these fights. But again, that's from the side of entertainment. You know what I mean? I'm not going to knock Mayweather Promotions for protecting him, guiding him, doing whatever it is, building him up. That's their choice to do that. But do I want him to fight Shakur? Of course, I want to see Tank versus Shakur. I want to see Tank versus Haney. I want to see Tank versus Loma. And I definitely want to see Tank versus Ryan sooner than later. So I would love to see all those fights. But whomever he's fighting, I'm going to his fight. So, and the fact that Mayweather Promotions knows that he has that type of fan base that's willing to travel, that's willing to spend their hard-earned money. And we're not talking about cheap tickets, that the inexpensive tickets of next month that we're going to see as far as Sebastian. Tank's tickets are not cheap.
No, this is an occasional.
So he's not some kind of made-up box office star. He is legitimate box office. I want everybody to understand that. It's legitimate box office. So, but Ryan is moving in that direction to be just as box office. He's not there yet, but he's moving in that direction.
And they need each other.
Yes.
They need each other.
So that's what I want to see. But I don't think ducking is as bad of a term as people think it is. People think I'm attacking or demeaning someone when I say they're ducking a fight, and I don't look at it like that, So I'm not a professional boxer, so I can't use myself as an example, but I can tell you that I've ducked opportunities outside of the sport of boxing.
Yeah, in business, right?
Yes.
I think everybody's ducked something.
Yes.
If you haven't ducked something in life, you haven't lived life,
Yes.
quite frankly.
Got to be discerning.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll get to a couple comments before we get to the nitty gritty, because the next part's the nitty gritty. But shout out to my man Dandada. He says every promotion takes their cash cow slow, but not that damn slow as Tank.
Right. That's true. But again, how many promotions have a Tank Davis? So, Anthony Joshua is on another level. So Matchroom has Anthony Joshua and
Canelo.
So Alvarez.
Top Rank has I know Frank Warren
Top Rank has Tyson Fury, with Frank Warren. So those are 3 guys. I'm trying to think, is there anybody else that brings more money to the table than Tank Davis?
I don't know, more, but maybe like Spence? No?
Errol Spence Jr. Okay. Errol Spence Jr., Deontay Wilder, and Tank Davis. So, but Tank Davis, I don't know. I mean,
because I know he's like one of the only American fighters that can fight and sell 15,000 plus easily.
Yeah.
Like not many fighters in this country can sell 15,000 plus.
And Terrence Crawford has done that, by the way.
I know he's done that.
I just wanted to throw that out there because people say he can't sell.
They say
I've been to several Terrence Crawford fights, packed houses in Nebraska and otherwise. So he can definitely sell tickets. But back to your point about Tank. The difference between Tank and even Wilder and Spence Jr. Tank Davis, and this is where you guys have to be consistent. So we're knocking him for opponent selection, but at the same time, he's packing arenas. So Errol Spence Jr. was afforded the opportunity to fight Mikey Garcia, who brought some fans to the table for that fight. Yeah, a lot of fans. Errol Spence Jr. has fought Sean Porter, he's fought Danny Garcia. It's funny, I had to hesitate because I'm so conditioned. They pounded in my head saying that Errol Spence Jr. has fought all the top dogs at 147, when actually he hasn't fought all the top dogs because the best welterweights of his era have been Manny Pacquiao, Terrence Crawford, and Keith Thurman. So it's kind of strange that the guy that they say has fought all the top dogs hasn't even fought one of the top 3 dogs in his own weight class. But he's a seller, but he needed that help. Tank Davis doesn't really need the help. People can say he needed Rolly to talk. That fight was going to sell regardless of Rolly, mouthing off. Isaac Cruz didn't talk before that fight.
That can't even speak English.
Right. That fight sold tremendously. Thank you, Tank. I enjoyed that audience in Los Angeles.
I think I would enjoy it too.
Yes. Yes. So that's the difference. Deontay Wilder was afforded the opportunity to fight Tyson Fury, who brought a legion of fans, over from overseas to Los Angeles, California, and actually kind of took over Staples Center at the time. So, it's Tank Davis hasn't had that guy. He hasn't had that opponent, and he's still box office.
And he's doing his thing. El Único Cocho says, Tank, pound for pound. I don't know what WTD means.
I don't know. What the damn?
What the damn? I think he's got a problem with you saying Tank is pound for pound top 10. Personally, I disagree. I don't think Tank is top 10 pound for pound. But, you can make an argument.
I mean, I think he's top 10 pound for pound. I think he's shown that he can be top level 130.
Yeah, he's shown the ability.
He's shown the ability that he can be top level 135. And, he's not an easy walk in the park for any of those guys at 140, including the guys that I named, Josh Taylor, Teofimo Lopez, Regis Prograis. Those guys would have their hands full if Tank chose to fight them at 140. And it would be a spectacular show, by the way, sold out wherever they fight because of Tank. But no, I mean, people underrate his boxing skills and they confuse it with, again, he hasn't fought this person, he hasn't fought that person, he hasn't fought this person. Now, I'm saying in reference to Tank, that's a choice that Mayweather Promotions is making. So they're choosing for him not to fight Lomachenko and those other guys. But yet and still, does he have elite boxing skill? Does he have elite boxing ability? And my answer to that is yes. So I don't have him, number 1, number 2, number 3, something like that.
But he's in your top 10.
I have him like at number 9 or number 10, pound for pound.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Earl Thomas has given us the perfect segue into the nitty gritty. This is what I was waiting to get into because I know you have a lot to say about this. Earl says, do you think PBC purposely waited all these years for Spence to get more experience because they feared Spence wasn't ready for Terrence Crawford?
100% yes. 100%. So let's not label PBC. Let's identify, because again, I'm allowed to do that.
Yeah. Specifics.
Al Heyman runs PBC. Errol Spence Jr. has a trainer, Derek James. Great trainer, elite trainer.
Creme de la creme.
Yes, elite. He has handlers. He has people that support him, that give him advice, not just Al Heyman. It's very clear. All of them are concerned about him fighting Terrence Bud Crawford. All of them. There's not one person affiliated with Errol Spence Jr. who is not concerned about whether he can get past Terrence Bud Crawford. So, this man down strap season, I'm here taking all the belts. When you get to 147, just get a belt.
I'm the big fish.
Yes, I'm the big fish. I'm this, I'm that, I'm this, I'm that. I'm going to get all the belts, and then I'm going to get the last one. Well, wasn't Errol Spence Jr. the one who went on social media? I've never seen this happen before in my lifetime. Went on social media and told the fans, stop talking about the fight.
Say, go brush your teeth and play with your kids. Stop talking about the fight.
He told fight fans to stop talking about him versus Terrence Bud Crawford. Think about that as a fight fan. Just think about that. He told him to stop talking about it. So if you want people to stop talking about it, that means you don't want there to be an organic buildup to a pay-per-view clash.
For undisputed.
Because how do you get sales? How do you get hype? How do you get buzz? By people talking about the fight. So, no, PBC didn't purposely wait. Errol Spence Jr. himself is reluctant to fight Terrence Bud Crawford. Now, I went on record last year and I said this fight is going to be announced in 2022.
I've seen you say it many times.
I said it last year. It's going to be announced. That's the word I used, announced. And that's the word I will continue to use. So when I saw my friend Brendan, True School Sports, offer breaking news, and it was breaking news, and he said, this fight is happening. I believe that's your wording. You said
it's happening. Yeah, it's happening.
And you said it about how many weeks ago was that?
Well, we reported the original report about Darren Fio. Remember Darren Fio? And then Darren Fio piggybacked off of my initial report. He said that the guarantee was holding the fight up. That was 13 days after my first report, and then I got word through sources that the fight is happening. And now you're starting to see people in boxing saying the same thing. The fight is happening. It's going to get announced. So maybe fingers crossed, maybe even tonight. Who knows? Yeah. But
the fight's going to get announced. Great. Congratulations. I'm happy I have a home in Las Vegas because I don't want to be one of the pissed off people that make travel arrangements and find out that the fight gets postponed or something else. I'll already be in Las Vegas and Nevada. So if the fight actually happens, great. I will be at the fight. If it doesn't, I'm not going to say much. I mean, it's it's one of these things where I think people need to use their own brains. I mean, I'm not trying to sway people to think one way or the other. I'm trying to get people to appreciate boxing, my favorite sport, respect the competitive spirit, of the athletes, and learn how to decipher and see the difference between boxers who really want to push themselves, really want to fight the best, no excuses. We have several of them right now. We've discussed them earlier. Alexander Usyk, Terrence Crawford, Vasily Lomachenko. Guys who want to fight the best and want to prove that they're the best. Errol Spence Jr., I question whether he wants to prove that he's the best. I'll just leave it at that. I don't want to harp on it. The fight's going to get announced, and if Errol Spence Jr. follows through and gets in the ring with Terrence Crawford, he's going to lose the fight. People can debate it all they want. You can slice it up however you want to. Terrence Crawford is a better boxer than Errol Spence Jr. People should already know that right now. I don't care how loyal of a fan you are to Errol Spence Jr. He's not as good as Terrence Crawford, and he'll lose.
Yeah. And I would echo those sentiments because I've been saying that for a long time. A lot like my man right here, Jerry, he said to you, Charles, he says, think about this. Crawford has said many times he does not care about fighting Spence and does not even want to talk about it. Several times he said that. Did you miss that? I
didn't miss it at all. That's what someone in the negotiating place has to do. So Errol Spence Jr. is aligned with Al Haymon and PBC. He doesn't have to negotiate the fight. Why would Terrence Crawford go around saying he desperately needs this fight and give leverage to the people that he's negotiating with?
Put himself in a weaker position.
So he needs to tell the public that he doesn't need the fight, and therefore he has leverage to get as much money as possible. The man needs to get paid for his work. So why would you go around and let people know, oh, I really need this fight? So if you really need the fight, then maybe you'll take $3 million instead of $10 million. So if you say you don't need the fight, then maybe you'll be fortunate like a Caleb Plant, who is nowhere near as good as Terrence Crawford, or a George Kambosos, who is nowhere near as good as Terrence Crawford. And Terrence Crawford will get the $10 million because maybe Errol Spence Jr. and his fans will say he needs the fight because he's supposedly on this mission to get undisputed.
Yeah.
Wasn't he getting belts after belt after belt?
He was cleaning up the side of the street.
So we're at 3 now. Doesn't Errol Spence Jr. need the 4th belt like Alvarez needed the 4th belt? Is that the case or not the case? So Terrence Crawford's people aren't promoting this fight. They're not putting it on. They're not producing it. They're not selecting the network. This is being done by Al Haymon and PBC. So how much does Errol Spence Jr. need to become undisputed? Something Terrence Crawford has already done.
Yeah, absolutely. He's just playing catch up, at this point. Errol hasn't even become the lineal champion in one weight class. Terrence been the lineal champion in 2 weight classes. And if he fights Errol and beats him, he'll be the lineal champion in 3 weight classes.
I mean, this is too like plain and simple. Like either, you want the fight or you don't. So Al Haymon, PBC is in control of this ship. They have Showtime assisting, backing, and trying to broadcast the fight on pay-per-view. Just make the fight and cut the BS. Like all this, you've already said Terrence Crawford hasn't fought anybody and he only fights C-level opponents, blah, 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 blah. You already said that Terrence Crawford costs top-ranked money and Bob Arum, 90 years old and all, supposedly can get mansions in Beverly Hills off the money he lost. Blah, 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 blah. You say all these different things, just make the fight. And if Errol Spence Jr. is better than Terrence Crawford, Errol Spence Jr. will become undisputed welterweight champion of the world. No one's going to complain. Nobody's going to cry. And the fact that Terrence Crawford has never even been involved in a controversial decision, I'll be the first to say it. If Errol Spence Jr. makes it close, listen to my words, read my lips. If he makes it close, give Errol the belts.
That's how much conviction Charles has in the fight. Okay. Well, Black Wamba said, and this is the perfect segue to like the last thing I wanted to hit on. He said Eddie Hearn would have made this fight by now. You wanted to talk about the promoters, right?
Yeah.
So I'll just ask you, Charles, right? Just in plain English, all the promoters in boxing right now, who do you think is the best promoter? Who's the best for boxing?
Individual Eddie Hearn, as an individual promoter.
So you're not saying Matchroom the entity. You're saying just
yeah. So the actual promoter technically is Matchroom.
Yeah.
So let's put that to the side. As an individual, Eddie Hearn is the best promoter in boxing, and there's no close second. I mean, Eddie Hearn, the objective that Eddie Hearn is doing is trying to make great fights and raise the profile of boxing globally.
Yeah.
So, and he's outworking everyone. Now, granted, you know, Don King and Bob Arum are both 90 years old. Bob Arum is obviously doing more than Don King is at this stage. But Bob Arum is backed by Top Rank, you know, and Todd is doing most of the grunt work over there in terms of a promoter's
world-class
duties.
Staff.
Yes. So, but in terms of individuals, Eddie Hearn, there's no close second, seriously. I mean, you know, and Eddie Hearn and I have had several conversations, and I've challenged some things that Eddie Hearn has said, and I've challenged some tactics that Eddie Hearn has tried to utilize that have proven to be ineffective in America. And I told him this when he first arrived with Matchroom USA. I told him he needed to adjust some of his ways because it's not going to fit in America, and we've proven to see that it didn't fit in America. That doesn't change the fact that he's traveling around globally. You know, he's facilitating large purses, you know, and he's bringing so many eyes to the sport of boxing. So his base is the UK, and he's used that base as his foundation to grow from there. So Eddie Hearn, hands down, is the best promoter in the world. In terms of the actual promotional companies, it depends what you're seeking. It depends.
Okay, well, I guess the best question I could ask is like, so you know, with all the big power brokers in boxing, you know, Top Rank over all of them. When you look at these companies, like I'll just name them one by one, like Top Rank. What do you see when you see Top Rank?
I see consistency. I see, you know, an eye for talent. Top Rank has the best eye for talent in boxing as a promotional company. I see the ability to groom a fighter, to build a fighter. Their matchmaking when young fighters are on their way up is impeccable. It's second to none. Every promotional company should learn by it, the way that they build fighters. They should literally study. They should literally ask Top Rank to give them courses on how to build fighters, because it's a beautiful thing, the way that they build young fighters up. First of all, the way that they identify young talent is incredible, because it's not as easy as what people think. It's not just going, you know, signing some Olympians. You know, they really are identifying guys that can be greats, and they've done that consistently. So after they've identified them, then they've matched them properly and they built them up. So I think that's the best thing about Top Rank. And they do have a good infrastructure, so they can handle a mega event. They can handle, you know, a small event as well. I think there's basically just 4 entities, you know. So, yeah. I mean, you don't really have to name. We all know it's Top Rank, Golden Boy, Al Heyman and PBC, and Eddie Hearn and Matchroom. Yep. So I think people need to understand the objectives of these 4, because they're 4 different objectives.
4 agendas.
Yes, okay. 4 agendas. So they all do what their agendas call them to do very well. So it's not about really who's better than who. It's what agenda do you relate to as a fight fan, or are you willing to respect all 4 of the agendas, which I am willing to respect all 4. So I don't have a favorite. You know, I have something that I relate to the most as a person, And then I have something that I relate to the most as a boxing observer, fan, connoisseur, whatever, historian, purist. There's different things. So as a person, I relate to Al Heyman the most because Al Heyman empowers his fighters. I think that's great. Al Heyman's inspiration was because he saw his brother taken advantage of in boxing and leave the sport injured and with very little money. And Al Heyman said, no, this isn't the way it's going to be. So Al Heyman inserted himself into the sport of boxing after being a major concert promoter and said, I'm going to empower boxers. I'm going to allow them to control their own destiny. I'm going to make sure they're healthy when they retire. I'm going to make sure they have money in their pocket and in their bank accounts. I'm going to make sure they have other business opportunities. Al Heyman has done all of those things. So we shouldn't complain about Al Heyman in terms of what his role has been to the fighters that he's signed.
Because they all seem to love him.
Yeah, the problem is that in executing that role, while you're empowering, while you're making sure that they remain healthy, you are keeping them away from fights that they could lose and, more to the point, be injured seriously, such as fighting someone like Terrence Crawford or Vasily Lomachenko or the Monster. Fighting these guys could possibly shorten your career.
Or life.
Yes. Yeah. So, it's not, people say, oh, well, you're biased. I'm biased for entertainment. Yes. I mean, I'm trying to be entertained. So I'm trying to see the best fights. I'm not thinking like, oh, Errol Spence Jr. might lose 2 years of his career after Terrence Crawford, beats him up to a point that he's never experienced before. Again, and let's just say Spence wins the fight.
Still gonna take damage.
He's gonna take severe damage. So do you put your fighters in those type of fights if you're trying to protect them, empower them, make sure they're healthy after they retire? I guess not. So Al Heyman is great at what he does. I prefer a promoter, an advisor, a manager who's willing to put his fighters out there. So, for example, I said Eddie Hearn is the greatest promoter, the best promoter in the world. He said Kell Brook was draining himself at 147. He advised Kell Brook not to fight Errol Spence Jr. He was like, look, you keep draining yourself, even at that time. He said Kell Brook's best weight was about 150. Yes. But definitely not 147.
No.
So Kell Brook said, no, I'm going to defend my belt. I'm not going to hand my belt over. It was a good fight against Errol Spence Jr.
That's why I like Kell Brook.
But he got beat. Kell Brook, prior to that fight, fought Triple G, a guy that was being ducked, by more fighters than anybody. I mean, Triple G was being ducked relentlessly. Kell Brook said, no, I'll fight him. Eddie Hearn said to Kell Brook, why are you taking this fight? You don't need to take this fight. Are you crazy? Eddie Hearn advised him not to take the fight. Kell Brook said, no, I'm going to take the fight. Kell Brook took the fight. Some advisors, some managers, some promoters won't allow it. It's not going to be suggesting you don't take the fight. They're just not going to allow the
option's not even there.
Yes.
Yeah, the option's not even
so do I know, the promoters we brought up, Golden Boy, Top Rank, PBC, would they put a Conor Benn, for example, in with Chris Eubank Jr.? No. Golden Boy wouldn't do it. Top Rank wouldn't do it. Al Heyman and PBC wouldn't do it. Eddie Hearn is doing it with a guy who's improving rapidly, with a guy who's raising his profile rapidly, with the guy who is selling tickets
rapidly.
And he's young and he's getting better. And all signs point to him being a champion in the future. And Eddie Hearn is putting him in there with with Chris Eubank Jr.
A guy that once challenged for a title at 168.
Yes. So, I just want to be clear what I'm saying as far as Eddie Hearn being the best promoter in the world. He's outworking everyone. He's traveling back and forth around the globe, and he's bringing boxing to more places than any other promoter in the world is doing.
Spain, Uzbekistan, all kinds of crazy countries.
That's why he's the best in my view. Now, I've talked about him. I've talked about Al Heyman. I've talked about Top Rank.
You haven't talked about De La Hoya yet.
Oscar De La Hoya. I'll talk about Oscar De La Hoya, and I'll talk about Golden Boy. As far as Golden Boy goes, I think because boxing is culturally based, I think Golden Boy is very important. I think it's important I'm born and raised in Los Angeles, California. I think it's very important there to be, a foundation of Latino fighters, and Golden Boy offers that foundation. I'm very happy for the guy we talked about earlier, Gilberto Zurdo Ramirez. He was with Top Rank. Top Rank, I think, did a horrible job promoting Zurdo. Now he's with Golden Boy. And Golden Boy, who has Zurdo, who has Jaime Munguia, who has Ryan Garcia, who technically is American and not Latino and doesn't speak Spanish, but he has a strong Latino fan base. And Virgil Ortiz, who fights out of, I believe, what's the city in Texas?
Grand Prairie, Texas.
These are 4 fighters with strong Latino fan bases. And Golden Boy, I think, is the perfect entity, perfect promotional company for that. Oscar De La Hoya is the perfect face for that. As far as the way he's merged, the Mexican market with the Mexican-American market with the American market and cross over to be a global star that Oscar De La Hoya was. So Oscar De La Hoya wants the big fights to happen. I don't think he's preventing any of them. He wants Ryan in there with Tank. He wants Jaime Munguia, contrary to what people believe. Oscar De La Hoya wants Jaime Munguia to fight Jermall Charlo. Okay, I promise you that.
That Munguia thing's a little complex because, he doesn't outright have Munguia under Golden Boy.
Okay.
Because, Munguia is also with Xanax Promotions,
right,
and Miguel Beltran, so
yes,
that's a little different.
Yeah, and then Virgil Ortiz, they're not backing down to anybody. And if something happens with
Crawford and Spence,
with Spence Jr. and Crawford, they're willing to put Virgil Ortiz in there with Terrence Crawford, and there won't be any side of the street talk. There won't be any excuses. There won't be who did you fight? Oh, you only fought C-level opponents. Oh, you cost Top Rank money. Blah 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 blah. The world knows that Terrence Crawford is elite. All these 4 promoters know that he's elite, and most of them are willing to admit he's better than all the boxers that they have. So if he came to any of those 4 stables, he would immediately be the best boxer at that stable. So, Oscar De La Hoya is not scared to put Virgil Ortiz in with Terrence Crawford, and I respect that. So I like what Golden Boy is doing. I think that they've kind of struggled with consistency in terms of promoting over the years, and I wish that they were a little more stable and consistent in terms of, delivering the fights, but they are very necessary for the sport of boxing. And I respect and I appreciate Latino boxing to the fullest extent. And again, being in Los Angeles, California, and going to a lot of small shows, some of them are made up primarily of Latino boxers. And I always see Golden Boy representatives at these fights, giving them encouragement, giving them motivation, giving them inspiration. And a lot of these fighters, they look up to Oscar De La Hoya, despite the way that he's been marred by the YouTube media and disrespected. It's interesting that you know, a lot of these YouTube media people don't invite Oscar De La Hoya to do interviews. It's kind of strange to me because, again, he's one of the 4 most influential men in boxing. You have Al Heyman, you have Eddie Hearn, you have Bob Arum, and you have Oscar De La Hoya. So, you know, get Oscar De La Hoya on your shows. I encourage you to get Oscar
I want to get
De La
on the show.
Oscar De La Hoya on your shows.
I'm making it known right now. I would love that. I would love to have Oscar on the show. That would actually be like a dream come true.
All right. Well, you know, if I can do something to help make that happen, I will, because, you know, Oscar De La Hoya needs to be on these shows more. Oscar De La Hoya loves boxing. He loves boxing. And I know we hear different things about Golden Boy, and maybe something's going to happen with Golden Boy. Maybe there's going to be a transition. But the man loves boxing, and he was willing to fight some of the greatest fighters of all time.
Not just him loving boxing. I would even go as far as to say he's one of the guys that is boxing.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, 6th division champion. Like, everything that all these young guys are aspiring to be, he was that. He was that times 10. Platinum selling artist, you know?
Yeah.
So that's what it is, man. But listen, Charles, it was great. We ran through pretty much everything. We touched on everything. Any final message you want to give to the boxing world?
I want everybody to encourage the best fights. That's it. Like, it's cool to have, you know, your favorite or, you know, who you root for, things like that, contrary to what people believe. I'm not rooting for Terrence Crawford against Errol Spence Jr. I simply think that it's a mismatch in boxing skills.
Ooh.
That's what I think it is. So, and lots of people who it doesn't pay for them to speak publicly on that have stated to me, and I'm talking about Hall of Famers, I'm talking about Hall of Fame trainers.
James Toney just said Terrence Crawford would knock Errol Spence out.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah, people then say what he said about, you know, Triple G and Alvarez, so then they dismiss it. But I mean, you know, so I just think that everyone should encourage that the fights get made and the fights actually happen. You know, I'm on record. I know the fight's going to be announced. Errol Spence Jr., Terrence Crawford. I still think, or I still doubt that the fight actually happens. But it will be announced, and all parties are right now aligned with that fight, you know, being made. And congratulations to them. We need to feel the same way, despite the fact that both men have been knocked out now. Anthony Joshua and Deontay Wilder need to get it on. Lomachenko, before he retires, please. Floyd Mayweather Jr., Leonard Ellerbe, please consider putting Tank Davis in the ring with Lomachenko. That's fireworks. That's something the boxing world needs to see. Come on. I mean, let's have the fights, you know. Maybe the people watching boxing now weren't privy to watch Felix Tito Trinidad versus Fernando Vargas. Amazing fight. Amazing fight. One of my favorites of all time, despite the low blows and the interruptions and all those other things. You know, we need these fights. Jaron Boots Ennis, tremendous talent. I've seen him fight in person. Not once, not twice, not 3 times. Tremendous talent. Stop talking about people are scared of him. Make the fights. You know, when you're that talented, you can easily maneuver your way up to mandatory status, become someone's mandatory, like Errol Spence Jr. or Terrence Crawford, and demand the fight.
Yeah. Period.
Stop, you know, all the side talk. Forget all that. You know, so I want to see these guys fight. You know, I want to see Crawford in his fight, by the way. I've been telling people that's the fight I really want to see, because that's a fight that Terrence Crawford would be vulnerable, and Terrence Crawford possibly could lose that fight. But, you know, Errol Spence is not the one to beat Terrence Crawford.
And I'm with you. Last question, Charles, and then we'll wrap the video up. What's your final prediction for Luis Ortiz versus Andy Ruiz Jr.? Because I know that we talked on Facebook and stuff about this before, but what's your take?
Final prediction, I'm gonna go Andy Ruiz. via decision against Luis Ortiz. That's what I'm going to do. I think Andy Ruiz has the faster hands. I think Andy Ruiz is going to throw more punches.
What happened?
I think, let me finish.
Go ahead.
I think Andy Ruiz is going to throw more punches. So I'm going to go with Andy Ruiz via decision. But yeah, I said Luis Ortiz, skill-wise might be better. I know the size differential could be an issue. But that's what I'm going to go with. I think it's an intriguing fight. I think it's one of those fights that could be strategic. I think it could be a firefight. I know a lot of people are hoping and expecting it to be a firefight, but watching their careers, and I've been to several Ruiz fights, I've been to several Ortiz fights. I don't put them out there like, they're that type of guys. They're capable of knocking their opponents out, but they do it in a strategic way. So, I think both are going to respect each other's power, each other's counter punching abilities and things like that. So I think there's going to be more defense and strategy in this fight than people say. Now, if it isn't more power to us, in the building that get treated to, high class entertainment. But I'm going to go with Andy Ruiz via decision against Luis Ortiz.
Okay. All right. I'm going with the stoppage. Because I was there back in South Florida when Ortiz fought Charles Martin. And I just did not like what I saw with his legs. I really do question where his legs are at. I think Andy Ruiz, with his hand speed and the way he's able to put things together, all it's going to take is for Ortiz to make a couple lapses. And I think he'll capitalize in the middle rounds, just before the championship rounds. He's going to hurt him. That's what I think. Ortiz will probably be outboxing him like 4-1 or something like that, or just up by like 3 or 4 rounds. And then the legs are it's gonna be kind of like when he fought Wilder the first time. When he fought Wilder in that first fight, and he was boxing his head off, and then the legs kind of, after a couple rounds gave out, and then he couldn't move laterally, and then his head stayed on the line. I think these things are gonna work against him, and I see Andy Ruiz capitalizing it. Also, I saw this morning, because I did go watch the weigh-in, Andy Ruiz came in at 268, which is exactly the same weight he came in at when he fought Joshua the first time.
Yes.
So he's not like because when he fought Areola, he was like 256. He was a little bit too light for his frame. So he lost a little bit, I think, when he fought Areola, just because of, he's a big guy, so he needs to carry a little bit of weight. But he's not the heavy 283 he was in the rematch. So I like what I'm seeing.
Ruiz is going to come in prepared. I mean, I think that Ortiz being knocked out by Wilder in those fights, I think the first fight, Ortiz got overconfident.
Yeah.
The fact that he was outboxing him.
My man right here makes a great point. Ghost says, did y'all know Andy has never fought a southpaw in his entire career?
No.
I didn't know that part.
I did not know that.
This is Andy's first time fighting a southpaw in his whole career, and his first southpaw is one of the most technical southpaws. So you know what? Now you got me thinking again. Listen. You might have to go back with your original prediction, because like me, Charles spoke yesterday on Facebook, and Charles was saying Ortiz. Now you're saying Ruiz. And now we have this nice caveat of information, right, that we maybe didn't consider before.
Yeah. No, I think that Ruiz is going to see some looks that are going to be challenging, regardless of the southpaw stance by Luis Ortiz. Luis Ortiz is big, strong, and has boxing skill. I went to Andy Ruiz's last fight, so against Chris Arreola, out here again in Southern California. And Chris Arreola is no Luis Ortiz.
Absolutely not.
So, and not to say that this same situation, because Andy Ruiz knows this is a much more important fight. This is a very important fight. This pretty much guarantees that he'll get a title shot next year if he gets through this fight and wins in decent fashion. So, but Luis Ortiz is going to show him some looks that he's never seen before. Yes, Andy Ruiz has fought Anthony Joshua. He's fought Joseph Parker. He's fought Chris Arreola. But Luis Ortiz is a different type of fighter. And that's why I'm saying I think there's going to be more strategy to this fight than people are saying. Neither one just runs in there and just wells away. These are guys that, take their time, pick their punches and things like that. And I think the thing that people are missing on this, I think Luis Ortiz is going to take his time more because it benefits him in this fight to take his time. Mm-hmm. He got excited and thought he was getting Deontay Wilder out of there. I don't think he's going into this fight looking at it like, oh, I'm going to stop Andy Ruiz.
So are you going to change your pick?
I have Andy Ruiz by decision. All right. That's my pick.
So he's taking
Look, you don't have to be the higher skilled fighter to win a boxing match. Both of these guys, first of all, have very good boxing skills. So it's not like Luis Ortiz is this guy way up here and Andy Ruiz is down there. Some could argue that Andy Ruiz has more skill than Luis Ortiz. I personally think Ortiz has more skill than Ruiz, but I think it's like this. I think it's very close. I just happen to think Andy Ruiz is the fresher fighter, faster hands, and more active. So, he's going to throw more punches. And so technically he doesn't have to be as accurate as Luis Ortiz has to be tonight. He can just be the busier guy, win himself 7 rounds, and leave with the victory. And now he puts his name in the hat to fight Anthony Joshua, to fight Deontay Wilder for the first time, or Joshua for the 3rd time. Possibly even Tyson Fury, even though, we addressed Tyson Fury early in this, and people can go back and listen to what I said about Tyson Fury. But, Andy Ruiz puts himself in a great position if he wins this fight. And if Luis Ortiz wins this fight, he puts himself in a great position. Luis Ortiz, I think, was supposed to fight Anthony Joshua at some point in the past.
Match him, signed him, yeah.
I think it was supposed to happen. It never happened. And, if Luis Ortiz wins this fight, I think, Joshua against Ortiz, that would be very interesting fight.
A really good fight.
Yes.
There's a lot of good fights, but
absolutely.
On that note, guys, look, this is Charles Hill. You can find him if you're on Facebook. Go to the groups, Intelligent Boxing. This is him. This is Intelligent Boxing. This is Charles Hill. Thank you for being on, Charles. We appreciate you.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for coming to California. Hope you have a great time.
I love California.
And I hope you enjoy the fights tonight. I think that California, my state, is the state to see the best boxing. I think we have the best trainers in the world. I think we get the best fights. This is the place to be for boxing.
Yeah. I don't know about that best trainer part. Sugar Hill Stewart trains in Florida, but that's the discussion for another day.
Yeah, we'll discuss Sugar Hill and the trainers. We didn't really get him to discuss the boxing trainers. Maybe next time we can talk about the trainers.
Okay. All right. Well, you guys take care. And like I say in every single one of these videos, you can love me or you can hate me, but I'm just Kid from Daniels. Until next time, take care, guys.